Two Rode Together is the 16th episode of the 4th season of The Golden Girls. This is directed by Terry Hughes, and as always there will be spoilers from now as I go through the episode and share some thoughts. And in general, it's a good episode. I think it deals with a really important topic. It's maybe not the funniest, but there are some nice moments. It starts off with Sophia and Dorothy coming in from a funeral, and Sophia made an interesting point about how she keeps having to get a new best friend because her current best friend dies, and then she has to get a new one, and they die, and it's kind of depressing, and the mood kind of stays there for a little bit as Dorothy reveals to Rose and Blanche that Edith, the funeral they went to for Edith, made Dorothy realise that Sophia's only 6 years younger than Edith, and Dorothy's really thinking about Sophia's mortality, and it sounds really heavy, but they do pick things up a little bit, and Dorothy tells this story about Sophia wanting to pick her nose, and then Rose tells a story while they're having cheesecake, and Rose has a very jolly attitude here, which is not in fitting with the theme, but it helps to keep things a little bit more merry, I guess, because it is quite heavy, and it gives us those little bit of respite. Those bits of respite in between the heavier conversations, and Rose tells this story, and Dorothy comes to the conclusion that to help her value her time with Sophia, she's going to take her away for the weekend to go to a cabin. And Sophia doesn't want to go to a cabin. She wants to go to Disney. She wants to go to Disney World. So that's where they go. And we'll come back to them in a little bit. Rose and Blanche spend some time together in this episode, and I'll just wrap up their part of the narrative. Inspired by Rose's story, Blanche decides to do some drawing of the characters, in particular this tiger that was in Rose's story from earlier in the episode. And what I really like about this is that Blanche was listening. When Rose tells a story, it's very clear by usually Dorothy and Blanche's expressions that they're not really listening. They're not that interested, but they can't help but listen because, well, it's Rose, and she tells a rather interesting, if baffling, story most of the time. And clearly Blanche was paying attention, and she and Rose decide to write a children's book together, which is really sweet. But then we ultimately find out that the story Rose told wasn't a tale from her parents. It was a story that had already been written. And obviously that's a big no-no for writing it yourself. And Rose ends up sharing a poem, and she said that she did write that one herself, and it was quite nice, and it was rather lovely. So it's a nice way to pad out the main narrative, quite light-hearted, and it's nice to see Rose and Blanche interacting like this, and nice to see that Blanche was actually paying attention to Rose. The rest of the episode, of course, focuses on Dorothy and Sophia. And Dorothy wanted to spend this vacation reminiscing, watching slides, looking at photos. That's not how Sophia wants to spend her vacation. I think this is a really interesting point. For Dorothy, there's obviously a lot of value in going over the past, times when, I guess, Sophia's mortality was further in the future, and having that moment of recollecting with Sophia and sharing those memories again. But obviously Sophia wants to enjoy however many years she has left having fun, and she wants to actually go on the rides, and she goes off by herself, and the pianist plays and sings It's a Small World, which was rather beautiful. It was a really lovely moment. And eventually Sophia and Dorothy talk about this, and we end the episode with a couple of shots of rides, and it was a rather fun way to end the narrative. And I do think it's an important topic. It raises good awareness about the fact that time is precious, and that eventually the people you spend time with are not going to be here, or you might not be here first, and you should make the most of that time. But also be mindful of how they want to spend that time as well, because what seemed like a good vacation for Dorothy was not what Sophia wanted to do. So a little bit more communication earlier on could have been good. But I guess credit to Sophia for saying at the very beginning, I don't want to go to a cabin, I want to go to Disney World. So I quite like that. I like the fact that she was very open about that, and I think that's really important as well. Time is precious, so if somebody's trying to do something for your benefit as well as theirs, make it mutually beneficial. I feel like for Dorothy, it didn't matter where they went. It was just about spending time with Sophia. and I thought it was a very well executed narrative dealing with some really important points there. The story with Blanche and Rose was nice padding. It definitely helped to make things a little bit more interesting, or a little bit, I guess, lighter, more lighthearted, and very sweet as well. Not the funniest episode, but that's absolutely fine. Not every episode is going to be hysterically funny. Sometimes we need something that's just maybe a little bit more serious, as we have here. And with that in mind, needless to say, I thought Two Rode Together was a really good episode of The Golden Girls.